This is my very first video in this channel, and my only purpose right now is basically to explain you why I decided to start the Lord's Society. So Lord's Society is basically a concept where I've been applying for myself in order to regain control of my life in body, mindset, direction, and ultimately finances. The reason of doing so is basically because on the last 20 years of my life, I've been entirely drifting. And by drifting, I mean I've been basically doing a lot of things, but not going really anywhere. And to understand a little bit this, I'm gonna get back to my childhood, where I could perhaps give you a little bit of context, and then you can understand much better why all of this is happening, right, towards this project called Lord's Society, where my aim is basically to help men that are tired with drifting in their lives. So I remember I like to play with the Lego toys, basically building things with blocks and so on. So that was already something that was pointing a little bit on my profile, my personality. I could say right now that I have a profile of a builder, someone that endures and likes to take steps one at a time and basically see the big picture rather than focusing on small details along the journey. I always was very curious about how to make money, and actually this is something I've been reflecting a lot, because it's something that actually makes me feel good. You could say, okay, that sounds very cliche, that people could say, yeah, of course, everybody feels good out of making money. Yes, but it's not about that. It's mostly like a sense of fulfillment, not in terms of I have obsession for the money, the luxury lifestyle, and all of these things. It's basically something that kinda allows people or anyone to have choices, because my only approach to money is basically as a tool to build freedom, okay? Not so much about having a luxury lifestyle, that obviously you can buy a lot of things with money, but right now I see money perhaps more as a tool for reaching freedom than and removing stress from the equation of life. Okay, so when I was a child, or I could say a teenager, at the age of 12 and so on, I already was thinking about systems on how to make money. My parents were not very happy about that, or kind of worried that these were thoughts of a very young, you could say, kid or boy. So they took me to a psychotherapist, where they did like a massive test and a lot of questions. It's basically like an interview. By the end of the test, it was like an hour or so and a half. They told my parents that I had a psychological profile of a sensation seeker. So I said before that I was a builder, so they told me that I was a seeker. For you to understand, a seeker is someone that actually is more driven by emotions. I'm not like that. I would say I have a very strong emotional EQ, so very deep emotion maturity. So, and they said to my parents that I could potentially have problems with gambling and addiction to drugs because of that type of profile. Obviously, I didn't have a master plan by that time. I was going to school. The only thing that I heard in life, because when you're a teenager, you need to make a big decision. You need to already find a path about what you're gonna do next. I think it's one of the most difficult, you could say, like crisis, or one of the biggest reflections that anyone can have at that time. So since I didn't have a proper plan, and this, you're gonna connect that to drifting again. My only plan was basically to satisfy the dream or wish of my father, which was for me to become an agricultural engineer. So you could see that I had that pattern about making money or interest about creating systems for wealth and so on. But I took a scientific bachelor. I wasn't bad in those subjects, but I was very irregular. So I had sometimes really good marks, sometimes terrible marks, and that made me. It took me 2 years longer than all my schoolmates to try to finish my studies. I wasn't able to do it, so by the last scholar year, I gave up because I thought, I mean, what's the point? It was going to take me another year more because I was not on the right path, right? So instead of going for economics, I went for a scientific bachelor to try to become an engineer, and I couldn't even access university. So that was the first big failure of my life by age 18 or so. So then instead I said, okay, I would like to do something or learn a craft, something I could do with my hands, in order to make some money. My parents were actually paying for a private school by that time. So I was feeling a little bit, sorry to make them have that expense and me not being, let's say, as productive as planned. So then I wanted to learn about how to become a chef, basically working on a kitchen. Then where I grew up in the east of Spain. Well, Spain in general has a very strong tradition for gastronomy and everything related to making food. So I wanted to study in the north of Spain, but when I saw the prices of those studies and how much money I would have to basically handle, that was out of my reach. So the only chance I had was basically to become a hairdresser, which by that time I had a good relationship with my barber, and he was the one basically suggesting this. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I said, okay, let's try to see if there is any vacancies. They had some indeed, and I registered because it was quite cheap, that education, so I could afford it. I was working in a club, just picking empty glasses. So with my incomes, I could afford to pay that education, so I did. But this was general hairdressing, so I never ever like it. I was feeling like desperate because I thought, okay, I took a step into something that I actually do not enjoy. But it was basically the chapter of cutting hair that, back to my idea of becoming a builder, this was something that clicked because it didn't have this kind of emotional artistic approach. It was more structured, more technical in a sense. Yes, somehow you could say this way of looking to the big picture, because this is basically how I work. I try to focus on the harmony of the volumes, to see a little bit the whole structure rather than small details. I'm not into details as much, even though I like to perfect every process. So this was something I could enjoy, and I decided to go through that. So I push hard in that sense, and well, I was doing not so bad. So I started to work as a barber, make some money. That was by the age of 19. By the age of 23, I opened my first barbershop, and I could tell you it went quite good. It was quite successful, and I was making decent money. And then I wanted to, because I was always, dreaming big, and I wanted to basically achieve things and get into a different standard of life, right? So I wanted to create things, and that took me to the next step. I'm talking about the year 2004, 5, you could say, between 2005 to 2006, 7. That was the times where was before the big financial crisis in 2008. So borrowing money was very cheap, and I'm actually my life has been extremely conditioned because I'm a product, you could say, of that financial crisis, right? But that time in 2006, I borrowed quite a lot of money from the bank. I'm talking about the debt of 650,000 US dollars. That was a lot of money by then. I didn't have a proper backup, so the only warranty I could bring to the bank, which of course they asked me for, was the properties of my family. So I was borrowing against those properties. The problem was this: as far as the money flows is not a big issue, but if you don't pay, the bank takes control of the properties and they would kick out my family from those properties. So by the age of 24, that I had to borrow, or not that I had to borrow, actually I was borrowing less. I was investing in business, but the business didn't work out. So I failed massively, and the crash was as big as I told you, 650,000 US dollars. And obviously I didn't have enough incomes to pay everything, all the expenses of the company. It was more expensive. You could say, okay, what kind of business was that? Okay, so I switched to from a barber salon. I actually went for a massive store. It was a 250 square meter store where it was basically like an open space with barber shop, with cafe, with clothing store. We had also some sun tanning beds, also a room for beauty treatments like massage and so on. We had also a tattoo artist coming there. So imagine, he was quite a big store for someone that was 23 years old and basically a newbie in the world of business. So at 24, I touched down. Financially, I had to fire people because I didn't have enough income to pay everything. So I stick to the debt, 650,000. As you can imagine, this was a down payment of nearly, I managed to negotiate it to 1,500 a month, US dollars. So that was conditioning a lot my way of making incomes. And even though I always had a lot of work, so I was very happy in that sense because I always had a lot of demand from clients and actually regular clients coming for haircuts. But as you can imagine, to have that was conditioning a lot my life. And it was so much that I felt a bit that I didn't know how to get out of that hole. So the only way, and this you're gonna connect all of these, you could say, lessons, teachings that happened to me. The only way I knew about how to make money was basically trading my time for money, which of course, as you can imagine, is always capped because is limited. We only have 24 hours, so you cannot sell more than 24 hours per day. My point was that I didn't know how to do or how to make money in any other way because I never had a financial education. That being said, when I crashed, I started to be a little bit interested about investments, mostly currency, so Forex investments. I came up with this idea back home, and of course they told me I was crazy, that was too risky, I was not going to manage to do this properly, and so on and so forth. So again, I came up with systems about making money. The first don't do that was when I was 12. Then when I was 24, again, the same story. So then I tried to basically have a life, right? So meet a woman, try to build a family or so, but of course, as you can imagine, I never managed to fix the money problem. So what I want to say with this is, like, when you have a situation where your life is extremely handicapped in the financial sense, there is not much you can bring to the relationship. Obviously, I had from that age, 24, 25, up to my 40s, which was 3 years ago, I had three, you could say, major relationships. None of them worked. None of them worked. And the main reason was the debt. I didn't have much time to put into the relationship. And guess what happens, when you start a relationship, both are looking for upgrading the lifestyle. So my only skill was to trade time for money with a handicap of already $1,500 down payment every month. So any surplus, I had to put more time in order to get more money. But what happened with that I had less time to bring to the relationship, which was always leading to problems and basically friction, arguments. You're never home, you're always working, you never have time for me, and so on and so forth. So that was one relationship, then another one, and then up to 3 relationships. And this was basically the sum up of my last 15 years, where I felt when I was 40. Of course, along the way, I had several barbershops. I moved to a different country. I'm actually recording this video from Norway. This is basically my home right now, or when I've been living the last 12 years. Again, because I was trying to get out of that situation and trying to increase my active income, but never enough to basically clear that debt. By the time I'm doing this video, I still haven't cleared that debt fully. I have 150,000 US dollars still to pay. So I'm 10 years ahead. Obviously, I haven't been paying extra that debt. But what I want to tell you is that that thing that I always had in mind about systems, about how to create money, mostly how to make more money through leverage, I never implemented until I was 40. So when my last relationship failed, I was basically touching down. All of this stress I had in my life, all of this basically running late to everything, trying to make more money, trying to upgrade my lifestyles, going from apartments to house, to 1 car, to 2 cars, to a camping trailer, to all kind of hobbies, windsurfing, snowboarding, you name it. I was spending money constantly and trying to find the sense of life, like, okay, this is it, or how people do it, how people get married, enjoy life, and so on. So obviously I was not happy. By the age of 40, my body was completely slide. I was chubby. I was 85 kilos. I'm now 80 kilos. Now I struggle to put on weight to build a bit more muscle mass. But of course, I'm 43. But I'm pretty proud of the achievements I managed to get out of this, let's say, 3 years of training, where I started at the age of 40 and I was kind of serious. So what I want to say with all of this is that when I got to my 40s, I decided for once in my life, I'm gonna pursue that kind of sense of creating systems to make money. So I started to study, I started to follow a little bit my passion, And out of doing this, I discover I have a true passion for the stock market. To that point that I came up with a strategy in order to optimize capital. Because if you don't know much about investments, obviously it's not the same when you approach investments having a large sum of capital that you can put into an asset and get maybe 7, 8, 9, 10%, that when you start from scratch. I told you from the beginning that I was a builder. I didn't have the capital. I had to build it from scratch. So how I did that was basically to start week after week. I was investing every single week. So I came up with a strategy, and I'm not selling you this strategy. Is basically to give you context about who am I as a profile, as a builder. I came up with a strategy in order to maximize the investments through capital rotation, because I started to study the cycles. So the cycles, if you don't know much about this, is basically every sector has, you could say, a high season where there is a lot of demand and a low season where there is less demand. Think about the hotel, right? There is always, like, in the summer is when the prices pump up, because there is more people that are willing to get a room in a hotel or any hotel. And then in the winter, depending on if it's a seasonal hotel, obviously, if it's in the mountains, it would be the opposite, but that is if it's in the beach. So then it would be the low season, the prices would be cheaper. So I came up with this strategy out of analyzing the institution, so institutional money. Why would they sell and buy, or so trim or increase positions when they already hold basically 4 or 5 million shares? Why would they do that? So basically it's to maximize their capital, to never run out of capital. So I started to implement that strategy. Right now it's been over a year that I've been doing this, and nonetheless I got great results, actually. So I'm telling you this because it's basically what I managed to follow, a passion that nobody understood, and now I discover on myself that I have a true passion for the stock markets, and I focus basically on those stocks that create cash flow. Okay, in another video I will go a bit more deep into that, but what I wanted to expose is that out of being drifting throughout my life, basically since I was a teenager until I was 40, I never had a mentor. I never had a proper, you could say, and I'm not putting the blame on my parents, but of course they couldn't give me advice into the things I was trying to approach because they never experienced that themselves. So it's not to put the blame on them, obviously. I truly love my parents and I think they did a great job. But of course, it's not easy to give advice to your child when you do not know exactly how to walk that path, right? So, and this is basically why I'm doing Lor's Society. I'm doing all of this in order to document and expose my journey, my struggles, because out of all the life lessons I had throughout my life, I decided to start to document all of this and put it on the service of perhaps other people that could somehow avoid some of the mistakes I made, where I learned the hard way how to not borrow money and for what purposes. So yeah, that's basically, and of course I learned late in my life, a bit late, I was 41, how to create leverage through capital investments and maximize also your cash flow generation. So right now it's like having two salaries instead of one, thanks to those investments. And I'm not done yet. I'm gonna keep building this because I not only that I have a passion, and it's like you could say, okay, but yeah, it's another cliche thing like, oh, work for this and have an amazing life. Well, I can tell you right now, I can show you a little bit the surroundings, but I live in a very humble apartment, so I had to downgrade my life a lot in order to have capacity or a surplus to be able to invest in the stock market. Right now, my only motivation, you could say, or my purpose is basically to have freedom. So I want to get rid of those bad debts and have a sense of freedom, because this is actually what I value the most. To get to a point where money is not conditioning your life anymore. So imagine about this. If I love what I do, I love cutting hair. This, I could do it for free. That's not a problem. But what I wanted to say that is, imagine if you didn't have to stress about money. And that's exactly what I want to achieve in my life. To get to the point where I could even go cut hair, do it for free, because the money is already fixed. I do this because I love to do it and not because I need the money. You see what I'm saying? So I think anybody working from that position is basically the most beautiful thing you could have in your life. So yeah, that's basically why I created Lore Society, and I wanted to expose all of this because on Instagram everything goes really fast. So I decided to start this YouTube channel. I hope you guys follow that journey. I wanted to start with the first video where I tell a little bit more about my story, my context, my background as a you could say a kid and now a 43-year-old man. So yeah, in this first video, so it was basically to introduce myself. In further videos, I will talk also about every trick or basically everything I did or put into myself to have control again about my body, my physique, my mindset, and my direction, my purpose in life, obviously, and having the finances in check, which I also feel is extremely important. I don't have any specific, you could say, love for money. I see money as a tool to create leverage, and I see money as something that could bring freedom to anybody, okay? So this is basically what I'm intending to share with you guys, to somehow those that are interested, so to retake control of their life, feel inspired about what I do, and of course I'm ultra happy to answer all of your questions. So I try to cover in this video the last basically 25 years of my life. Obviously, I didn't want to make it too extensive, but of course, if you guys have any questions regarding anything I do about body, mindset, direction, and finances, feel free to drop it in the comments. Last but not least, I wanted to tell you that I'm also, I love books. I have books everywhere. I'm always reading, basically every single week, but also I took a certification because you can say, oh, what is he gonna teach us about body and so on? A barber, right? Well, I'm a certified nutrition specialist by the IFBB. If you don't know what's that, is the International Fitness and Bodybuilding Federation, which is worldwide recognized and is the one driving the bodybuilding and fitness competitions along. So I'm certified nutrition specialist. I'm certified also Ikigai coach, which means Ikigai is basically I'm a coach to help others about how to find your purpose. Okay, that for me was also not easy to find. As I said, I told you about this kind of passion I had about making systems to generate cash flow without me putting the hours. So I had to, I think if I had followed that path when I was a teenager, perhaps I would be in a different situation, but perhaps this video wouldn't exist. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to make it more extensive. This is it for now. I hope you guys had enjoyed my story, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments down below. Subscribe, hit a like if you want to support the channel. It's for free and it actually helps me a lot. Thank you very much for your time, and I see you in the next video. And quickly here, a small house tour. This is where I live. As you can see, the bathroom. This is basically the only room, kitchen, the sofa, and my bed. And yeah, this is it, the whole apartment. Okay, and this is a park, nice view to the park. So yeah, just wanted to put this in order to expose you how I live. Very humble, very basic, but still building wealth from here.